So we want to be able to get posts, let's say. In our Angular app, we got the post list component. And there right now, we're getting posts here. But this is a useless operation because in our posts service, we start with no posts. And that is what we're fetching with get posts. Well, now I actually want to reach out to our Node backend here and fetch posts, dummy posts for now because we have no database, but I want to fetch posts from there. So let's go to our backend and we'll add all the other code now to our Express app because this is the tool we want to use for creating routes. It makes it so much easier. And in there, we will now register a so-called path because I want to fetch posts if we send a GET request to /path. Now to do that, I'll first of all get rid of that redundant middleware here. But then here on my app use middleware down there, I will add another argument. You can add a lot of or as many arguments as you want. The last one is your function which handles the request. The other arguments are filters or other middleware you apply. Like the first argument here I pass is the path for which I want to filter down. So if I add /posts here, it means only requests targeting localhost 3000/posts will reach this middleware. All other requests will actually go into the void because we have no default error handler right now. Now I will actually name this /API posts simply to make this really clear that this is a REST API, but this is optional. The important part is now we have to target this path to reach this code. And in here, I now want to return some JSON data. So instead of calling send like this, there actually is another method, the JSON method. And this will, return data in the JSON format. I'll set up my posts dummy data here, an array, a normal JavaScript array, and I will follow the format of posts in the front end, though with one extra field. In the front end, our posts right now have a title and content. Now I will also introduce an ID, because typically, if we had fetched these posts from a database, they would have an ID. Important for you to understand, the backend code and the structure of our data there is totally decoupled of the front-end model we have here in the post model file. It can be the same, and in many cases it probably will be the same, but you can also have data where you work with different fields and properties on the server than you do on the client. An example would be the user model. On the backend, you might store some extra information which you don't want to pass on to the client, for example, because you don't need it there. Things like the hashed password. You don't typically send that back to the client because you don't need it there, and it would even be suboptimal from a security perspective. Now for the post, as I said, a post here is not defined as a model because we're not using TypeScript here, as you can tell. Theoretically, it would be possible, but the de facto standard language for Node is sticking to vanilla JavaScript, so this is what we will do here too. And therefore, I will just create like this, add an ID, which is some random unique string, then add a title field where I say first server-side post, and add our content field where I say this is coming from the server. Now I'll restructure this a bit to simply make this easier to read, put this into multiple lines. And one post is boring. Let's add a second one. Let's roll our fingers over the keyboard again for the unique ID. And creative as I am, I'll name this second server-side post and add an exclamation mark to the content. Now we got two dummy posts. Later, these will be coming from a database, of course. Now to return them here with our response, we could just send them like this. We could just pass them to JSON. An array is a valid object. We could turn into JSON. But we could also send back a more complex object where we maybe have a message like posts fetched successfully. And this really depends on how you want to structure your API and which data you want to use on the client. Here I just want to demonstrate that you can send more complex objects too. So here I have my message property and then my posts property, which actually holds the posts array. Now we're sending this object as JSON. Now one little extra piece of information I want to add to the response by chaining another method prior to JSON is I will set a status code with the status method, and here I will set it to 200 for success. Now you don't need to return the response because it's the last statement in this use function anyways, so it will return. You shouldn't call next because there is no next middleware we want to execute. We really want to finish with sending that response. And therefore, we're all set to try this out. Now let's save this, and the server should restart automatically. And let's try it in the browser first by copying that path, going to the browser and adding localhost 3000 and then this copied path. And you should see your JSON data as text here. Now it's cool, we can read this as humans too, but of course it's also highly machine readable. And that is what we'll now take advantage of by connecting our Angular app to it by using the Angular HTTP client.